Maybe you suck at sales and you're an introvert and you hate people. Well, maybe you should probably hire sales. It's about figuring out what you're really good at.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Campfire Capitalism. I am your host, Desmond Dixon, and today we have no Heather or Josh. You just have me and an amazing entrepreneur who exited his business successfully. And I'm super excited for you guys really hear his journey, hear his story, and really just get an idea of the behind the scenes of actually going through exiting your business through a sale, since 80% of businesses who want to sell actually don't. They fail to sell, right? So I think this is going to be an awesome conversation. And I'm super excited to introduce to you guys today, Mr. Jason Swenk.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
What's up, man? And he is the host, by the way, of the Smart Agency Masterclass. So definitely go check out the pod. We'll leave that in the notes. But Jason, man, before we get in, I'd like to cut to the chase and really just tell us a little about your story and, your journey, man. Like, how did Jason become Jason?
Yeah. So, I graduated college in 99 and I got a job with Arthur Andersen as a computer programmer, but there was a problem with that because I learned how to outsource in college. And so I paid everyone to do my work. And so I didn't know how to program, but I was really good at designing websites. And one of my friends looked like Justin Timberlake when NSYNC was really popular. And so I created a fake band, fake website called In Shit, and it got popular in 99. And then people started asking me to design websites. And so that's how I started my digital agency back then, is just by accident. And then, years went by. I ran that business for 12 years, working with clients like LegalZoom, Hitachi, AT&T, doing everything for them on the digital side, and was able to successfully exit that business, which then I thought the grass was greener on the other side. So I go develop an iPhone app, hated that, shut that down. And then when I was shutting that down, I was just lucky enough that some old competitors running digital agencies reached out, was like, hey, how'd you grow to a big team? How'd you sell? How'd you do this? And that's when I started the Smart Agency Masterclass podcast. And then 2 years ago, I had a couple of really smart people come to me wanting to start another agency with me. And we started that, where we buy and scale agencies. And we bought 10 agencies in the past 2 years, and we're a little over 40 million in revenue. So there you go.
Wow. What a journey, dude. I love how you started off with just doing arbitrage. I think that is usually the first mental modeling that for entrepreneurs, you got to learn how to hey, how can I buy labor or buy something cheaper or at a certain cost and sell it at a higher price, right? And I think that's super important. So how much of that helped you, with in business and, with these strategic partnerships, how much did that mental modeling actually help you be successful?
Well, I mean, being resourceful is everything when you're growing and scaling a business. That's the true, I think, trait of an entrepreneur, is just being resourceful, and that's what I looked at for my team members that I brought on. I wouldn't want someone just to be able to follow a set process. I want them to look at the process. How can we make this more efficient? How can we make this better? I'd love for Florida State to have me come back and speak about outsourcing, and then they'd probably take my degree away.
It's funny, man. So this is sick. So when you're going through that, that sell of your business, right? Talk to us, what was that process like? Were you nervous? Were you had some attachments to it? Talk to me, how were you internally feeling going through that process?
Well, we went through it a couple times, right? So when you build a business that's really good, a lot of people want to buy it, but then there's a lot of kind of toads, I guess, you need to kiss before you find the princess. And so we went through it a number of different times. And then the final time, when we were getting to kind of the final hour, it was really emotional, just because And this was not the first company I built. This was the first successful company that we built. There was so many other failures, along the way that we tried throughout, and we just didn't see it because we were distracted. We could talk about that later on, but it was like my baby. Like, I was like, is this the right move? Like, I kept associating myself to being the CEO of this agency and nothing more. And then I realized once we sold it, I was like, well, great. I'm a lot more than a digital agency owner. I can go do all this other stuff. But it took me a couple months to figure that part out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, going from like probably being always doing something to like all your time. Like, so when this is the interesting question. So when you decided to leave, right? Or not leave, but when you sold, did you stay on? Did you have to stay on technically? I don't want to get into too many, you don't have to get into too many details, but was it like a quick break or what?
No. So my tour duty was for 2 years, transitioning everything over, or in the event that we sold the agency again. And that happened 9 months later. And I was like, peace out. And so that was pretty cool because then we could double dip. And then I realized too, like, I've been fired from every single job I've ever owned or ever had, from a tram driver to a towel boy to working at Wendy's. Like, I've been fired from every job. And so I realized, once I became an employee, really, after we sold, I was like, never again. Like, I'm unemployable. Psychologically unemployable, right? That's yeah. Especially if you had the instincts of like, someone's going to pay me to do this, and I'm just going to pay someone else to do it, and I'm just going to eat off the margin, right? Well, and I think it's the reason for that, and I think why a lot of entrepreneurs can't go work for someone is we're resourceful and we can get things done a lot faster than everybody else. So, like, for example, in this business right now, I only work 8 hours a week. And so I've always looked at things, how I can make things more efficient and get things done faster, but have a bigger impact. But I think a lot of times employers look at, oh no, you need to work 40, 80 hours a week, or they feel like you're ripping them off, even though if you can do it more efficient, like, who cares? Like, you're still getting the same result.
Yeah. It's almost like they look at time, like money is all it is stored time. Right. And so even as employers, we have stored, like, how much money we have in the bank account, like in terms of cash flow, oxygen. It's like, okay, well, how much productivity does this capital provide for me? And I think the big psychological switch is like, am I paying for a desired outcome, or am I paying for boxes to be checked and T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted, right? And, I used to work in corporate, and I was the same way, man. Like, I could not be in that environment. And just because it's tied to so much of time. It doesn't even matter if you even are productive. It's just that, they know that they're squeezing every bit of time out of you. So I think that's pretty interesting. So let's segue to this, 'cause I think this is like a natural conversation. So when you're like managing these teams, because right now what you're doing is impressive. Like, I was not expecting that, you're acquiring these different agencies. I'm guessing you're probably consolidating some of the operational expenses, right? You're doing a little bit of arbitrage there, because that's what I would do if I was in that situation. So like, when you're working with your team, man, like, are you like, do you give them, like, how do you manage your team? Like, so I'm very interested to kind of figure out, like, how do you like build these teams and manage them?
So I'm only on the board and as an owner for the new agency called Republics. So that's the great thing. I don't do it. Like, we put really good leadership team together that manages all that. So we don't have to worry about that. But with the first agency and the other companies that we've had, the best way to manage people is to, and you kind of got to go back to the very beginning. Like, if you look at when I started my agency, I was an accidental agency owner, or you may be an accidental entrepreneur, right? And then you know how to do something really cool. Someone offers you money for you, keep doing it. And so you have no really vision of where the company is actually going. And then you start bringing on people in order to do this, right? And then what happens is everyone keeps coming to you. So you're the toll booth, right? You're slowing everything down, even though you have 40 lanes and everything's coming to you. Now, the way to solve this and to lead your team is to really get some clarity. And this is kind of what I call kind of system one is, who are we going after? Where are we going? Why are we doing it? Like, what are the beliefs? And then once you give them the power for that, now you've given them the power to make decisions because they know where the company's actually going. A great analogy is, let's say we're on a boat from New York Harbor and we're going to London. And I put all my team on the boat, but I don't tell anybody where we're going. But I'm driving the boat. And then after 8 hours, I'm like falling asleep at the wheel. I'm like, I'm going to the cabin. I'm going to go sleep. If the boat changes course, come get me. Well, if you've ever driven a boat, you know the boat changes course like every second. And you're just like, right? Like, all right, screw it. Like, the boat's going to London, just go there. Well, now you can go to sleep. You can get some rest. And the people know the coordinates to get to London. And then they can say, I don't want to go to London. I'm jumping off the boat.
Mm-hmm. Man.
So that's how I've always led my team.
Yeah, that's super important. So it's almost like you got to have the right people with the right skills, also the motivation, and like you said, like the ability to look at things in a way where they can actually improve it. Maybe they find a faster course to London, right? Than the path that the path that you charted, right? So, or maybe they say, hey, I know this tool. I can bring this tool in that can help us get there faster, or get there with less, more cost effectively, right? So that's super fascinating because I think the transition from a small team to a bigger team, or even from a solopreneur to having a mini team like that infrastructure is like a super challenging. I'm personally going through it myself. And I feel like I brought on too many people too quickly and it made more work, right? Because you can make more work for yourself if you don't bring in the right people, or if you do too much. So I'm super interested to ask you this, man. So being an agency, how I want to ask you this, because this is deep. So there's a ton of different agencies out there, right? Like marketing. So what is your, out of all the things that you've seen, what do you see as the most cost effective or the best path for success for, let's just say, a service-based business? We're not going to talk about e-commerce because obviously e-commerce is on animal or product-based. So let's just say for service-based businesses from a marketing perspective, what are some of the best acquisition channels, or what would be some advice from a marketing perspective that you can kind of give to some of these people who have service-based businesses?
So that's usually the mistake a lot of people make of going how do I acquire more clients right off the bat? And they start going and figuring out, well, how do I generate a ton of leads, right? But that's kind of 4 steps ahead. And you got to kind of think about, how can I build the right foundation in the very beginning, right? So it goes back to the clarity, who we're going after, all that kind of stuff. Then once you figure that out, and you have to narrow focus, if you're going after everybody, you're screwed. Everyone always looks at their biggest competition, or which is also a mistake. And they go, well, they're going after everyone. So let's say we were going to create a competitor to Facebook. We're not there's no way we can compete with them. We would have to find what's our unique selling proposition, what's unique to us, and go after a particular market. So when Facebook went after MySpace, if anybody remembers that, they went after Harvard, and then Ivy League, and then universities, and then high schools, right? They kept building layers once they started mastering those. And so the same thing goes with service-based businesses. You have to figure out who you're going after and what you're going to offer. And then how can I position that in the right way? And then you can get to, the prospecting and the sales channels that you have out there. But I find so many people are just trying to, what's the secret sauce? What's the cheat sheet? And it's really just figuring out, going to that, I call it going to the Vegas buffet. You got to try out everything. And through process of elimination, you'll figure out what you like, what you're really good at, what you guys believe in, and then you can actually go do it. And then it's all about building the right systems, building the sales system, so the owner's not doing all the sales. The owner's doing the sales. It's just not scalable. You're trying to replace yourself. If you're a service-based business, you should be going after 5 roles. Set the vision, communicate it to your team. Be the face of the organization. And I know a lot of people would say, they'll be like, well, if I'm the face, everybody's going to want to work with me. Yes, they will, but you just say no. And a great example is Gary Vaynerchuk with VaynerMedia. He didn't work on your accounts. He's just the face of the organization.
Yeah.
Right. Then coach and mentor your leadership team only and show them how they can do that with their team. Like, how can we benefit those people? Understand the financials, and then build the strategic partnerships or build those strategic relationships. Those are the only 5 roles you should be doing as a CEO. But before then, you're kind of the owner. You're kind of like the janitor. You're kind of doing everything, but you need to get to those roles.
Yeah. IT, customer service, project manager, all the things.
Yeah. It's just not a scalable business if you're doing all those things. And then if, like, when we go into a business to buy and we see the owner doing all this stuff, your valuation just gets chopped. Like, we're chopping you off at the knees, going, well, man, you're crucial. Like, if you leave, which you want to leave, your business really not worth anything.
Yep.
And that's a big, punch in the gut to people.
Yeah. So what would be like, okay, this is good. So out of all these different areas, obviously you have fulfillment or operations, you have finance, you have sales, right? Sales and marketing or acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say that you found your perfect offer, right? You have market pull, right? People are referring you, you have good retention, you have stabilized cash flow, and you have one like project manager or someone internally, helping you with admin work, right? Technically at this point, what would you say should be that person's first hire, you think?
So, well, I mean, it's all about self-awareness of the owner or of yourself, right? So if you're really good at like attention to detail, which most visionaries or owners are not, like, we're kind of forced into it, so we're kind of okay at it, then you should hire a project manager because they're probably really good at sales. Or maybe you suck at sales and you're an introvert and you hate people. Well, maybe you should probably hire sales. It's about figuring out what you're really good at, and then just build a team around that. And really thinking about, like, I got to a point when we were around 2 million at the agency and I wanted to quit. And I literally, my wife was like, well, why don't you just close it down and go get a job? And I literally I took an interview with NASCAR, and they asked me 2 questions. They asked me, and I couldn't answer there. I had to literally go back. I was like, I don't know, because I really didn't want a job. Like, that was ultimate failure for an entrepreneur, is to get a job, right? And so they go, what do you want to do every day? What don't you never want to do ever again? And I was like, I don't know. That's the dumbest question I've ever heard. But I went back and I thought about it. And so I took a piece of paper, put my hand on it, drew a circle around it. And I said, everything outside this circle, what do I want to never do again? So I started writing it down. It took about an hour. Project management, client communication, sales, like all these things, right? And then inside the circle, I wrote all the things I love doing. That, like, I love the creative process. I love meeting with the team, brainstorming, all that kind of stuff. And then I was able to figure out, who did I need to hire? What technologies did I need? What did I need to say no to? So it's really starts with you and then branches out from there. And there's no one size fits all. It's just kind of little frameworks that you can kind of use to figure all that out.
Okay, audience. I hope you got that clip there, because that's an awesome exercise. Like, I might do that later today, actually. So appreciate that. Man, understanding what you don't want to do, what you do want to do, especially when as an entrepreneur, you have so much, like, in a way, some controlling factors, right? Because you want to make sure things are run smooth, because reputation, and usually you're obsessed with getting people their desired outcomes, right? Because you don't get far without wanting to serve and help other people, right? At a very high level, because you realize it's not about you. It's about helping other people, paying it forward, abundance, right? It's really hard to get by being scarce with resources. We're trying to get by on people. So talk to us a little bit about, like, because you mentioned that you wanted to you're thinking about hanging it up once you got to a certain point. You hit that point. Like, talk to us about that transition of knowing what to hire and like how that like give us a little journey, man. Like, unpack that a little bit more, like that transition period where you almost wanted to quit to then exiting, like the things that you did and how that helped attribute to you successfully exiting your business.
Yeah, I just realized that I was doing everything, right? I needed to build a channel where we're delivering consistent leads. I needed to get out of the account management. I needed to stop working in the day-to-day, operations. I needed to build a really successful leadership team. And then the last stage before we, got like, and I look at it as kind of climbing a mountain. Like, I live in Colorado and I just love mountains. I mean, you can tell by the logo and all that kind of stuff. But the last thing I needed to do is like, how can I scale my leadership team? How do I create better leaders, in the organization? And so those are all kind of the stages I went through. Like, if you looked at it as, in the very beginning, you're kind of in this staging process, right? The staging before you climb the mountain, and you got to kind of decide on your niche and your offering. And then like base camp's really kind of like, I need to build my lead generation system, right? Then when you get to the kind of the crux, or when you get to the climb, I call, you're building the sales system, right? Where it's not dependent on you. Or when you get to the crux, you're building the right team so you can get out of the day-to-day operations and so on. So you just got to think about, what are the systems that you need and the right people once you have the right foundation? And then you got to be willing to adapt and change on a dime. When I was like, I had some of the systems, but I got to a point where I was like, after I did that interview, I was just like, I'm going to create a business around me of what I want and what I love doing and what I don't love doing. And then it was really as simple as that. But then I'll warn you, when you're able to create those 5 roles and you get out of all the other shit that you used to do, you're going to be depressed. Because then I remember going into a meeting and I'd be like, oh, cool, Scott, what do you need on the creative process? Oh, no, we're good. And then I'd go in, I'd be like, all right, Mike, what do you need on the sales? No, we're good. And then I would go home. I'd be like, to my wife, I was like, business doesn't need me anymore, but it needed me for the new role that I wanted, that I created. And then once I realized that, then you can move on.
Wow. Yeah. That's why I was asking, like, when you exited, like, how was going from doing so much or, being in your cadence and in your rhythm to, yes, you had a successful exit, but like, what do you do to fill that void? Because as entrepreneurs, we love solving problems and being of value and creating and all this fun stuff. So I love how you share that. That was sick.
And you lose your significance. It feels like, and that was a big thing when I sold the agency. I was just like, I'm not significant anymore. But then you just need to find the next thing. And then you can, replace it. And you're like, okay, good.
Cool. So, all right, let's talk about the next thing, man. This was sick. So I think it's also important. It's great to talk about, like, okay, successful stories. I love it. I think it's great to see evidence, but I think it's super critical based upon your journey of like when you hung it up with the app idea. So talk to us about when you try to create an app, and then like, what was the moment where you realized that you had to hang it up? Because I think that's super important of knowing when to stop and when to double down. I think that's super important as well.
Yeah. So the app I created was called Goalvator, and it was on the App Store for a while. And it was an app where you take pictures of everything you eat, and it would give you a visualization. And you would, throughout the day, you would pick an emoji of how you feel. So it would overlay, like, if you're feeling tired and run down, it would show you all the food you ate. And if it was like all browns, and like, no shit, dummy, like you ate junk, versus like if it was greens and reds and, oh man, I feel pretty good. But the problem is I hated doing it. And so I didn't believe in it. I wasn't doing it. I couldn't sell that. And I didn't like selling one to many. I like selling one to one so I could see the results. And so I just thought the grass was greener on this, like as a service-based business, I would look at the product side and be like, man, grass is greener on that side. And what I realized was the grass was greener on the water that I fucking watered. And so I was like, I'm gonna get it back to the service side because this product side is not for me. Like, I don't like this. So that's when I was just like, nah, take it off the app store. I don't like it. I mean, it was a great idea. It probably worked really well. Now someone can go steal it. Just send me the royalty checks, but
by 2%. That's it. 2% of everything.
There you go.
Man, it's so funny because I work with a couple of different entrepreneurs and specifically who did try to go from service to products, like create a software company. And I personally, like just knowing the tech side and the service side, it's really hard to go from service to software. Like just because the sales process is different, the marketing is different, like everything's so different, between the two. But it's sick that you realize that during your process that you internally knew that it wasn't in alignment. And then you immediately like had the courage to say, you know what, like, I'm just going to eat this and move on to what I know I do.
We put a lot of time and money into it, and I'm just glad we just didn't have to raise any money. Like, some people that start a business, their constant job's raising money. I probably would have hated that even more.
Yeah. You talk about like, imagine raising money because you're not only like thinking about your employees, keeping them fed and have a house, have a good life. But now you like took someone else's money. Now that's another level of responsibility. And then you have to answer to those investors and deliver.
That's the thing. Answer to the investors.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. I'd be a bad communicator to them.
That's so sick, man. So before we wrap up, man, I'm super curious to ask you, like, what are some things that are super tangible that you could leave of someone who is, let's say they're in the middle of the sweet spot. So they're doing 7 figures a year and they're on the fence of, thinking about selling or not. What would be some pieces of advice you would want to give them about possibly exiting?
Well, build a business that you may sell one day, but you don't have to. When you have to, you're not going to be worth that much and people will sniff it out. Like, I think you should only sell a business if kind of a couple reasons. If you need the money or if you don't enjoy it anymore. That's really it. Because there's a lot of, and my business partners get mad at me sometimes as I'm chatting with some agency owners to buy. I'm like, man, you have a great business. You're making millions every year. You personally, you're not doing much. Why do you want to sell? Like, what am I missing? They're like, oh yeah, I don't know. Like, isn't that everyone like this? I'm like, no, like I would keep it. Like, this is, you can use this as an incubator and create all this other amazing things. Right. So think about what's the real reason to sell. Like, if it's just a like check mark and say, like your ego to sell, like, I think that's a dumb reason. Like, who cares what other people think? That's one thing you should stop thinking about is like, who gives a shit what people think of you? Don't make decisions on money. When I closed down that app, a lot of people would take a long time. Like, they probably would have done that for many, many, many years because all the money and time we put into it, like, I'll never get that back. But time's more valuable. And the life you create is worth way more, because I see too many people working all the time and not taking the time off, having fun. Like, every Friday we don't work. I go with some friends and we do epic Friday adventures, and like that's what we're supposed to be doing rather than work 24/7 and then enjoy life. When we're barely can walk when we're 60, like that sucks.
Man, sunk cost fallacy is real, dude. It's real. Like, the more money and time you spend in something, the harder it is to shake it off. But it's like, as long as you, like, one thing I noticed with you, like, throughout this conversation is you always like check in with yourself. Like, your self-awareness is like, your clarity is like, you're very clear, and you sound like you use that a lot in terms of like how you help other founders and entrepreneurs or agency owners. Like, having that clarity is everything for your future self specifically, right? Because you can always like go back to that source. So, man, this was awesome. So how can people find you, man? Right? If they want to sell you their business, or if they want to like continue to work with you to help them out in terms of to sell their business, like what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah. So if you're an agency owner, go to swenkit.com or you can go Swenkit, just swank.it. So Swenk is spelled SWENK, or you can go to jasonswenk.com. I just like saying Swenkit. But I own both those URLs. So go there and go check out the podcast and the thousands of free resources we put out there. You know, like our why is to create a resource we wish we had when I was running my first agency. So go check that out. That should help you out. And if you like that, then we can chat after that.
Boom. This was so fun, man. You brought a lot of value. I really appreciate you. And thank you for coming on the show, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me, Desmond.
Cool. So, hey, Campfire Capitalists, you've made it to the end. I really appreciate you for giving me your most precious resource on the planet, which is your time. Don't forget to check out Jason and all the things that he's doing. I mean, this guy is super knowledgeable. I bet you there's so much things that, we haven't even uncovered from this guy because he has a ton of knowledge. So go check him out and leave us a rating and review, send us some questions, and go check out his podcast as well, the Smart Agency Masterclass podcast. Don't forget to do that. So hope all is well, and we'll see you on the next show, guys. Peace. If you call